thanks, Marcus. That was lovely, and we really appreciate it. And I also thank all of you for coming out on this great day. I've been this year before at these festivals, and every time I come, it makes me feel good. Whether it's rain or shine, it doesn't matter. People are here paying serious attention to serious questions, and that's great at a time of great distress in the country. It makes me feel good about the future and about you, so thank you. I applaud you for being here. I want to tell you about the book that Dan and I wrote. Usually writers will tell you how agonizing it was and, you know, the difficulties of collaboration and all the rest. But frankly, this was a joy. We loved this story. We were privileged to do it. You'll hear more about it. But I also want to tell you why we did it and what we hope to achieve. Actually, the idea began in 2006, 2 years before the election. And I was looking ahead to the next election and what might happen in the way of a book. Teddy White was a friend of mine. I didn't want to do another Teddy White book. He was in his own class. He was kind of a romantic about politics. I don't feel romantic about politics these days. But I am fascinated by it. And it seemed to me that for a lot of reasons, the election of 2008 had in it elements that were quite historic. The country was in trouble. Everybody knew it. It didn't matter where you lived, whether it was Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative, moderate or the rest, urban or rural. Everybody felt the United States was in difficult times, and we seemed to be sinking. Our prestige abroad had diminished to where I have not seen in my lifetime. We had an election that was wide open for the first time in 50 years. No president was seeking to succeed himself. No vice president was seeking to succeed the president. And then you had the backdrop of a series of critical issues. The two wars going on, both terribly unpopular. They're both still with us, as we know. We can talk about that. And they are not over by any means. You had the situation that the people believed that our political system was broken. That no matter where you turned, you didn't know where leadership was going to come. And then you had this extraordinary background of a range of really fascinating potentials in our history. The first real possibility for a woman president. The first real possibility, although unlikely as it might seem at the time, of the first African-American president. You had a throwback to the Vietnam era, John McCain, the hero of the prisoner of war. And then you had a whole cast of other people succeeding to the presidency. So no matter what happened, it struck me that this would be a great story to try to capture. And more important, it was clear that something in the background was ticking away. The economy was in trouble. It had not been declared to be in a recession, although it actually did take place officially in December of that year, a year before the election, and wasn't formally named as such until almost before the election. So you had a time bomb, a ticking going on, a collapse of the economy. All of these elements were taking place. And that's the story that I thought was worthy of trying to do it. And I'll let my colleague and friend, I want to say, this could not have been done without a great reporter and great friend, Dan Balz. So I want to turn it over to Dan and let him pick up the story.
Thank you all. Thank you, Haynes. Haynes, as always, is very generous. People say, what was this collaboration like? I say, with Orville Haynes is so difficult to work with. You get a sense of that. This was a fabulous collaboration. Thank you, Marcus. It's nice to be introduced by the boss. He's been a terrific new addition as our executive editor, so we're very happy at the post under his leadership. I want to pick up one piece of what Haynes was talking about, which was how this came together. Haynes called me in early 2007 and out of the blue and said, I'd like to get together with you, I have something I want to talk to you about. And we agreed that we would have breakfast together the following morning to talk about whatever was on Haynes' mind. I went home that night and I said to my wife Nancy, I said, well, Haynes called today and he wants to get together to talk about something tomorrow. And without missing a beat, she said, well, if it's about a book, just say yes. And in fact, it was about a book. Haynes outlined that morning over breakfast his concept, his idea that this was a year, this was an election, this was a moment in the country's history that deserved a book. We knew that this campaign would be covered minutely, as all recent campaigns have been, but it was his sense that because of where the country was, and because we were at a potential pivot point, that this was a book worth doing. And I listened to him, I heard him out, and I said, Haynes, it's really interesting that you would give me a call about this because I am 2/3 of the way through a book proposal of my own for the exact same book. We talked about it that morning, and we talked about it for some time, and we decided that the two of us together would be able to produce a better book than either of us in the election of 2008. The battle for Ted Kennedy's endorsement and the often angry and contentious phone calls that went on behind the scenes during that South Carolina primary as Bill Clinton and Ted Kennedy discussed in very difficult terms Ted Kennedy's feeling that race was being injected into the campaign and that the Clintons were somehow responsible for it, and Bill Clinton's understandably anger at that charge, given his whole history as a politician who had sought to bring the races together. That period ending in South Carolina, the next day Caroline Kennedy endorsed, and the next day Ted Kennedy endorsed, was in many ways the pivotal point in the battle for the nomination. We recount in somewhat shorter terms the survival of John McCain after his campaign imploded in 2007, and nobody gave him a chance to win. His whole strategy was, in the estimation of some of his advisors, to simply be able to exit with his head held high. And instead, he held on. He looked to New Hampshire as being his lifeline, and he was blessed by opponents who were unable to take advantage of his weaknesses one by one, from Mitt Romney to Fred Thompson to Mike Huckabee to Rudy Giuliani. None of them were able to outlast or maneuver around John McCain. We tell the story, and we asked him a couple of questions, and I want to quickly read to you what he had to say. The first has to do with, did the election bring an end to the Reagan era? And his answer was, no, it did not. That there were certain things in terms of skepticism about government that would still exist in this country despite the size of his victory. But he said, what we don't yet know is whether my administration and this generation of leadership is going to be able to hew to a new, more pragmatic approach that is less interested in whether we have big government or small government, but is more interested in whether we have smart, effective government. I think at this point, that is still one of the key questions on the table about the Obama administration. For many people, including some who voted for him, they are not sure where this administration is going on that question. They're waiting and watching and wondering what will happen. Finally, we asked him about Lincoln. To what extent was Lincoln a role model? And he said, look, I don't want anybody to think I'm comparing myself to Lincoln, but Lincoln was my favorite president. He said, the one thing he thought that he really liked about Obama was, he said, he had an honesty and an empathy that allowed him to always be able to see the other person's point of view and sought to find the truth that is in the gap between you and me. He said, the truth is out there somewhere. I don't possess it. You don't fully possess it. Our job is to listen and learn and imagine enough to be able to get to that truth. I think this is the style of leadership that Barack Obama brought to the White House after his election, and I believe that one issue that he's grappling with now is, as the country repolarized after 2008 so rapidly, whether that approach to leadership can get him through the difficult times. Thank you very much. We're happy to take questions.